change of lure. If you've ever wanted to try using lures in the sea instead of bait, then here's a quick guide to what they are, and as you can imagine, there are thousands of different types of lures in terms of costs and colours. And I must say, it is such a terrific way of catching fish. You use really light line, usually braid, with equally light rod and reel, and you're really engaged with the fish. So once you get a fish on using one of these lures, it really is something else. You feel really connected with your fishing. We have of course come a very long way from those first lures, which as far as I can work out consisted of a bit of old herring skin flapping around on a treble hook. Now, lots of different lures float, but these are actually surface lures. So they all float. These will float on the surface of the water. But the difference is when you start retrieving these surface lures, they don't drop down under the water with a lip. They actually sit on the surface of the water. And this has got lots of advantages. As we look through some of these here, we've got Axia. Make them lazy lures is a good company as well. Head and Lures, a more traditional lure company, make these great big beasts. Look at those. But they all have one thing in common, which is they sit on the surface of the water. So you may have heard people talk about off the top fishing. This is a pachinko lure, and you can see there, I mean, I need to change a lot of these hooks, but you can see there that it's got rusty hooks and single hooks, which I've changed. Normally these come with treble hooks, and we'll take a more detailed look at trebles later in the video. The brand here is Zeros, and it's the Pachinko brand, the 125. That's the millimeters of the lure, so 12.5 centimeters, and it casts like an absolute dream, this one. The way it's weighted really helps you cast it a longer distance, and in fact when you look at some of the cheaper ones here, they don't cast as far, not as aerodynamic, not as well put together, so you don't have to spend loads of money on these things. But if you take a look here, this is on the Axia one, where this nice sort of silver colour here, this is always going to be attractive, isn't it, to the bass, because it looks like a real bait fish. Over the years, yeah, I don't look after them, but that'll wear away. With something like the Pachinko, which I've had a similar amount of time, yeah, it's less likely to wear away, really. As you can see, I don't look after these too well. More on those hooks later. So the advantages of some of these floating lures is that you're not going to get into snags as well. If you imagine you're bringing a lure in and around those rocks, well, on the surface you're not going to get snagged as much. And of course, when you hit a fish using a surface lure, you can literally see a fish take the lure. It's such an exciting way to catch. Maybe not as productive as shallow divers, and we'll come on to that in a minute, but certainly I would have a surface lure in your collection of one sort. You can see how, you know, like this company here, what they've done is they've done a very good copy actually of the Pachinko, and the difference in price is quite significant. There's actually a video there where we compare cheap lures with more expensive, and lots of different variations of these surface lures as well. This is a bent minnow, they call it a bent minnow. You can see the shape of it, not really designed for big casting, as you can see, but this will flick and turn in the water, and it mimics, you know, like a wounded bait fish. So if you do see bait fish in the water, similar sort of size that bass are plucking off, this would be an easy picking, wouldn't it, for the bass. And this is what I'm saying about hooks as well. So we've replaced the treble with a single, but what you've got to be careful of is the shape and that profile of the lure. If you've got a single hook, it can catch like that, so you're ending up retrieving or fishing with it not in the right place. Obviously the point of the hook can get caught on the lure. Trebles are a little bit more effective for that. The only problem, of course, with these, well, not to say the only problem, and there's more than one problem with having lots of trebles. Although, yes, they'll catch and hold a fish really, really well. Bass's mouths are quite big and easy enough to unhook. But the two main problems you're going to have with a set of 3 big trebles like this is the bass might take the lure here, but this trailing treble could be jabbing into the fish, and it can do it some damage. It's probably not as rare as people think. I mean, maybe 1 in 50 fish I might cause a problem with a trailing treble, and I think I've had one over the years, of lots of bass being caught. I've had one where it's actually hit the eye of the bass. And the other problem with these trebles is unhooking. We did a video the other day and it literally went through, the bass moved with that in its mouth, and that treble went through my hand. Yeah, so quite painful for the user. So lots of ways you can get around that. You can use those 2-0 singles, 3-0 single hooks. You can cut down with the amount of trebles that you've got, or you can actually cut the barb off. And if I zoom in on there, let me have a look. Not focusing. Yeah, you see that bit there? That's the barb, and you can crimp that down with a pair of needle nose pliers, round nose pliers, or even just sort of normal pliers. Just click it off. And then that way, that's not, it's going to be easier to pull out. You can as well use 2 of those 3 hooks on the treble, so you can actually cut it off there as well. But if you play a fish well and it's in a good amount of water, you can get away with using those treble hooks. So yeah, it's long been a debate on the channel. Some people get really angry. I think there's some middle ground somewhere, but have a think and see what you want to do. It's certainly better for fish handling and for you if you don't use 3 trebles. You may hear people mention poppers. This is as close as I've got to a popper really, which is it has a big face on the front of the lure, and when you retrieve that in, that creates a lot of water splash, I suppose. That creates a lot of water splash. It's not really something I think is necessary. I don't think the bass are attracted to the splash as much as we think. I've certainly had lures just sitting on the surface. Actually, it was this very lure. It was just sat on the surface, not moving while I sorted out a tangle, and the bass still hit it. So if you imagine the bass is looking up at the lure like this, it is seeing that profile as well. So in terms of colours, I mean, we've got a little mixture here. I've got lots of these sort of lures. These are just the ones I took with me on the last session. Lots of different colours. I personally do have your own opinion. I'm not seeing much difference in the colour of the lure that the fish is going to take, if that makes sense. So it can be essential at times, but not with surface lures. I mean, that one there's even clear, isn't it? So yeah, that's the face of a popper. And similar sort of thing on this pop chinko as well. You notice the word pop in the branding. So you might hear those called a popper, a big open face like that. So it does, it can create a lot of fizz in the water. Bass, of course, use their lateral line as well as their eyesight to sense these fish. So that's surface lures. So that's a little introduction to surface lures. It's a great way to catch. I do different sizes as well. This is a Pachinko 100, so 10 centimeters. Again, you see where I need to change those hooks, but the quality of these lures is that little bit better, isn't it? That gold there, and it's a more realistic looking eye. Yeah, I suppose it catches more anglers than fish, I suppose, but they do cast a little bit better. That's got a rattle. It's got a rattle and a weight inside the body, and that will drop down as well while you're casting, just to give a little bit of weight at the end of the lure. But yeah, good lures. Do get one. I don't tend to use these metals much. I used to fish a lot for pollock off deeper rock marks, and actually these were really good for the pollock. They go down a little bit deeper. And when I talk about the Dexter wedge, that's actually an old brand. You can get all sorts of metal lures here. I think you can see here it's just a slight, it's just a slab of metal, isn't it? And it's got a sticker on there which is meant to look like fish scales. And in effect, that's that's really all you need. It does have the disadvantage that, of course, it sinks really quickly as well. You can see this one's got a treble hook on it, and I've got some glitter on there as well. And you'll pick up things like mackerel with these. You can use single hooks, seeing if those half circle hooks would catch with the mackerel. They still did, but you might be better off with a normal J hook on the back of that as well. But I say, in terms of a nice simple way of casting, you can actually use, and I would consider using a swivel on these sort of lures, whereas I wouldn't on these. These are more modern, and these are more modern metals. This one here from Savage Gear, you can see how it's weighted at the back there, slightly heavier. I mean, this absolutely flies. It's aerodynamic in that's the thing zooming through the air, and that's got proper saltwater hooks on it. Yeah, you can see how that glistens there. Maybe that adds a little bit. Lots of different versions you can get. These are drift ones. These, again, you see that glistening. You see why we spend all our bloody money on these things, can't you? So there you go, just another option. These metals, particularly if you're fishing deeper rock marks or off piers, jetties, things like that, have a look at those metals. This other thing on here, you may see something like this. This is known as a jig, and you're not retrieving this in a, as if it's a fish swimming through the water. Something like this will drop down through the water column, twist and turn a little bit, and it's got one of these assist hooks on there. You can see it's tied on with braid, and a little bit of added bling on there as well. I don't really know enough about the jigging to talk about that, but I just thought I'd add this to say, from the boat and things like that, that is another type of lure that you may see mentioned on social media and what have you. Usually the first foray into lure fishing from the sea is for mackerel. Generically, these are called mackerel feathers, although these particular ones are not made out of feathers. They've got like silver foil on there. Just find them, just as good as the feather ones, really. But these have lots of different hooks on them. You can get them with 6 hooks. I've certainly seen people try and fish with 12 all strung out, thinking they'll get more fish, and you just end up with more tangles. I mean, in its purest sense, I suppose these are a lure. This video is more about the single soft and hard plastics that you can use. But yeah, in effect, that is still a lure, isn't it? And the fish is still thinking that is a little fish. They have the advantage, it's more for catching mackerel, these, but they have the advantage that you've got a weight at one end. You put something like a 1 ounce, 2 ounce lead on that, cast it out, and then a swivel on the other end attaches to your line. You can see where I've left the braid on there. Yeah, just something that you may see. Usually the first thing that people pick up will be some mackerel feathers. My advice is to cut these down to strings of 3 or 4 if you want to catch a few fish, rather than use 6. So this is a soft plastic lure, but it's got a weighted head. So this is made out of, I say lead, but I think it's a lead equivalent nowadays. This particular lure is from Drift. Obviously there's lots of different ones and lots of different flavours. But it comes with this latch system here, and the hook, if you look on here and look inside the lure, the hook can be replaced. And oh, sun coming out, it's so hot today. It's like the soft plastic goes onto that and then pushes up onto the head, and then the hook, it's known as weedless, and it comes out of the body of the lure. It should be exactly in the middle, and because of bass, for example, and pollock will hit that lure with such ferocity, it'll end up, you know, curling that out of the way and hooking itself. Particularly bass, very rarely do they not hook themselves once they hit a lure properly. Occasionally it might be nudged by the fish, but so that is a weighted soft plastic, and we go into a lot more detail on another video which I'll put in at the end of this one, on to the differences between these soft plastics. There is another type here. This one here is from a company called Savage Gear, and it's got, well, I don't know about these things, because in essence it looks like a good idea. Okay, you've got like a little blade on there, and that goes into the rubber bit like we just saw on the last one. You can see the hook mechanism, so that's quite good. I like that the rubber sort of stays reasonably close to the head of the lure, and then the action in the lure is done by that little wobbly tail. You see the tail there, and you can get different types of tails, and then replace the tail, you know, once you've caught a few fish or you've snagged it and it's broke. It has this little vent system in there as well, that the lure sits in and tucks itself away, so it is properly weedless, but it just comes apart. And they give you this, let's see on here somewhere, one of these, they give you like a little stick, cocktail stick to put through. You know, I've used it here with a different head, but that stick will go through, goes through that section there, but it just comes apart. And honestly, after about 3 casts you come back and it ends up like this. It's really badly engineered. It's a shame because it's so close, and I quite like the wide-bodied shads. They represent these whiting that we get this time of year, October, November, really well, but they're just I would avoid those if you're a beginner, because they can be quite frustrating. One of the better ones I find is, you get different types here. This one represents a sand deal. You can see I really like these. This is from a company called Westin. They do a variety, but these just, you know, that little, all it takes is that little hook on the, you see coming out. I'm really well on these lures this year. These are Sandy Andes, one to look out for, and actually for next year I'm just going to be fishing almost exclusively with those Sandy Andes. You know, drift are pretty good. It's also got fish black minnows as well, and they do like a lot softer rubber, lots of companies. And just those, you can just fit the soft plastic. Drift do these ones here. You can see it's like a little fish with the hook on there. But we'll have a little look at these hooks. This has got a twist lock hook on here. Spend loads of money. Subsurface lures you can spend a lot on. We'll have a look at some cheaper ones in a minute. You see, this is an Angel Kiss. It's an Angel Kiss lure here in this two-tone, you'll find a lot have got red actually. Whether that's a trigger point for a wounded fish and the bass like it, I don't know. I quite like the eye on that though, it's quite good, isn't it? Green. Place the hooks, again, a big heavy rattle on there. So yeah, these subsurface lures are representing bigger fish in this example. You can get smaller lures as well, but I like these bigger ones, a lot easier to cast. Again, this one here is from our friends at bassluresuk.com is their website. If you've been following the channel, you'll notice we did have, you notice on here it's got like a lip, so it will float, it will get you out of trouble. If you think you're going to snag, just stop reeling in the lure and it floats to the surface. But when you start retrieving in, the lip in the lure shifts the water so it starts heading down. And there is a difference, you know, some of them will just be under the surface. Subsurface lures, they're fizzing around, maybe bouncing on the surface, coming down. And we had some real joy with this the other week. I don't know if you've seen that video, I'll put it at the end as well. But we use this lure and it just gets down that little bit deeper, and that might well be where the fish are feeding around a particular rock or reef system. So have a look at the lip of these lures. It's a really good example of a lure manufacturer that's producing lures that are a little bit cheaper. Another example here, and these, you know, will have good saltwater hooks on these. More realistic eye. See, there's a little bit more detail gone into that eye. And you see on there, as with these lures, you have like a little link there. See that? And that's where you put a lure clip or tie the line directly to. Again, if you want to learn more details, we've got a couple of videos after this one I'll put up. Another example there, like rainbow colours. So, you know, a lot of it is matching the hatch. If there's a lot of mackerel around and the mackerel look like that bottom lure, then put that one on. This is a ripstop from Shimano. Again, you know, I'm out here doing the hooks today, but this is another one that needs it. And these will fizz through the water, float up. Always check out that little lip, and that gives you some idea of whether it will dive down. Although I'd encourage you, you know, if you're new to it, to use lures like those ones we've just seen. You can replicate things like big prawns. Bass, pollock, wrasse will love a prawn, so something like that, you know, looks like a big brooder prawn, doesn't it? On a cyst hook on the back, and then I'd put a treble actually on that one. And even get crab lures that you don't want to be retrieving that too fast. Another example of a soft plastic here, unweighted, screw fit. You can use these screw hooks as well, so that screw goes into the lure. Two different types here. You can see how that one's been put on there. Again, I've got plenty of videos of how to put these on, but basically two different types of hooks there. The worm was running, wasn't it, dead straight from there to there. Sometimes on a bigger soft plastic I like to use. The advantage of these dew life sticks or worms, run that through weed and, you know, almost bounce it on and off rocks, and you're very unlikely to get snagged with something like that. The retrieve is slower and you're using the advantage of whatever the water's doing more than anything else. I do like those. It's worth having a little try those, but you might see those, you know, on people's catch reports. You don't tend to use them too much. We used to use a lot of the X slayers. I've got one of those here somewhere. Another lure that sort of came in and out of fashion. You attach the hook to that. It's just made of rubber, and again, the advantage is, yes, you get it out the snags, but also it's a lot cheaper, isn't it? You can almost mould your own. We've got a friend did some. It's another little jelly worm lure that Mark from Manic Fishing made up and sold. I know he's caught some pollock with those. You see the hook on this looks a bit oversized. I'd like a bigger hook, but you see there's a weight on the shank of the hook. That's another option as well. So obviously that'll sink a little bit more and it will cast a little bit better being that bit heavier. Just found this lure actually. In terms of like the soft bit of plastic sticking onto the head of the lure, I haven't found anything better than this one. I can't remember what it is called. I'll put it underneath anyway if I edit this video. But yeah, that's a really good example. Good looking lure that. Again, had a few fish on that. Some lures are jointed like this one, perhaps to represent a launce or a big sand eel, even a garfish. It's got like a metal lip on that. An older design. That jointed bit makes it look a bit more injured, doesn't it? J for jointed, the Rapala J13. Again, rusty hooks. You see where it's jointed in the middle. This is what started it all off for me actually, a J13. It was about the only lure you could get back in the early 90s. Still had a few bass though down at Beachy Head on that. And back to our favourite Westin again. This one isn't weedless. You see it's like rigid between the head of the lure and the hook. So it's weedy, more likely to catch the weed. But I really love how these Westin lures are put together. Really good. So we started off with this little bent minnow. The water's not particularly clear. But I'm probably chancing it a little bit, trying to get one off the surface. So let's see what else we got in here. We've got this mackerel shaped zonk. We'll give that one a go. There's a few mackerel around. I'm seeing some fish break the surface over there. Hopefully they're bass that I can see. Trying to slow it down a little bit. We had a little knock there and I've just picked you up over there. Don't know if the camera's picked up, but nice slow retrieve. There we go, we're in. It's got off. Very, very small one that. And I've set the drag wrong, so we'll try again. Tighten this drag up. Try again. Well, we haven't got our normal rod today. I'm just using this little Mega Force bass. Anyway, stay tuned. We do have some bass coming. For now, though, I'm going to cast this one out. Water's looking quite clear here on this little spot. Let's give this one a go. We'll start off with the Komomo 2 today. Conditions have changed again. It's been such a funny old week. This one's a subsurface lure. Nice slow retrieve with this. Getting soaked. So a couple of days ago I took the dog for a walk in the morning as I usually do, but I brought the rod with me. 20 minutes dog walk before work. And you won't believe what happened. morning dog walk. There we go. One on the morning dog walk. That's not bad. Just flicked a rod out, taking the dog out. There we go. Well, we had some